The Sand War. How the world's most ordinary grain became a global crisis. When you think of sand, you probably picture beaches, deserts, or a child building a castle. It feels endless. But sand now sits at the center of one of the most overlooked global crises of our time. We use about 50 billion tons of sand and gravel every year, making it the second most consumed natural resource after water. And the kind we need most, the rough, river-shaped kind, is disappearing. This is the modern sand war. Not all sand is equal. Deserts look infinite, but desert sand is mostly useless for construction. Wind polishes desert grains into smooth, rounded particles. They don't lock together in concrete. The sand we actually need comes from rivers and seabeds, where water erosion shapes grains into sharp, angular fragments that bind tightly in concrete and glass. And we are removing that river sand far faster than nature can replace it. Sand forms slowly, over thousands to millions of years, as rocks weather and fracture. We extract it in hours. That mismatch is the heart of the crisis. Before the boom, sand in the Old World. For most of human history, sand was local and limited in use. Ancient civilizations used sand to make glass beads, pottery glazes, and mortar. The Romans mixed sand with volcanic ash to create early concrete. Medieval builders used it in cathedrals and castles. In hourglasses, falling grains helped sailors measure time at sea. But demand was small. Extraction was manual. Sand was gathered from nearby riverbanks in modest amounts. No one dredged entire coastlines. No one stockpiled it for global trade. No one killed for it. Sand was useful, but it was not strategic. Today, it is. The Silica Gold Rush 2026. In 2026, sand is no longer just a construction material. It is a global commodity. The global silica sand market has crossed $15 billion, growing at nearly 8% annually. Demand is fueled by high-tech glass for smartphones, silicon for microchips, renewable energy infrastructure, and the booming fracking sector in the United States. Sand is traded, stockpiled, and speculated on like oil. When sand becomes financialized, extraction accelerates. When prices rise, violence follows. When markets surge, ecosystems strain. The sand war now has investors. The world is built on sand. Concrete is mostly sand and gravel. Glass is melted silica sand. Silicon chips inside our devices begin as sand. Sand makes up to 35% of concrete and forms the backbone of roads, bridges, and dams. Look around you. The building you're in, the road outside, the screen in your hand. All of it rests on sand. The difference is scale. In the 20th century, we built cities. In the 21st century, we are rebuilding the planet's surface. A farmer in Wisconsin. On a quiet stretch of farmland in western Wisconsin, Tom Larson once thought of his soil as something that grew corn. Then came the sand rush. Beneath fields like his lay northern white silica sand, high-purity material prized for fracking. Mining companies arrived with contracts. Some neighbors signed, others resisted. Now heavy trucks rumble down once silent roads. Fine silica dust sometimes lingers in the air. Town meetings grow tense. Tom still farms, but he says the land feels different. The soil used to mean harvest, he says. Now it means minerals. The sand war doesn't always look like a disappearing shoreline. Sometimes it looks like a rural field turned industrial. The green energy paradox. We often think of sand as a dirty material, but renewable energy depends heavily on it. Recent research shows that sand and gravel account for over 70% of the mineral demand. For clean energy infrastructure, a single large wind turbine requires 500 to 1,000 tons of concrete, mostly sand. Solar farms, hydroelectric dams, electric vehicle infrastructure. All of it stands on concrete. We are using nature's skin, river sand, to protect nature's lungs, the atmosphere. We are solving one crisis while intensifying another. The collapse of the Mekong. In Southeast Asia, the crisis has reached a tipping point. Years of sand mining in Cambodia and Vietnam have deepened sections of the Mekong River so dramatically that they have weakened its famous reverse flow into Tonle Sap Lake. That lake feeds around 6 million people and provides roughly 60% of Cambodia's protein through fisheries. A fisherman at dawn. At sunrise, Soka pushes his narrow wooden boat into Tonle Sap. He has fished these waters since he was a boy. Now the fish are fewer. The water levels shift unpredictably. The currents feel weaker during reverse flow season. When the river changes, he says softly, the fish change. And when the fish change, everything changes. Upstream dredging lowers the riverbed. The lake fills less. Spawning grounds shrink. For Soka, this is not a policy debate. It is dinner. Global Water Bankruptcy 2026. In January 2026, UN scientists introduced a sobering phrase: global water bankruptcy. One of its major drivers is sand mining. River sand acts like a natural sponge. It filters water and helps recharge underground aquifers. When sand is removed, the riverbed sinks. The water table drops. Wells that once reached water no longer do. Farmers cannot afford deeper drilling. Crops fail. Communities face water insecurity. Sand is not merely a construction material. It is part of the plumbing system of the planet. The hidden health crisis. The damage spreads further. Across parts of West Africa, abandoned sand pits, legal and illegal, fill with stagnant rainwater. These pools become breeding grounds for malaria-carrying mosquitoes and harmful bacteria. Scientists have linked rising cases of Buruli ulcer, a flesh-eating bacterial infection, to disturbed soil and stagnant water left behind by dredging. A nurse in Ghana. At a rural clinic near a former mining site, Nurse Amma changes the bandage on a young boy's arm. The wound began as a small swelling. Now it demands weeks of treatment. She has seen more cases in recent years. We used to think it was random, she says. Now we see what happens when the land is disturbed. The sand war leaves scars satellites cannot detect. They are visible in hospital beds. The sand mafia. In India, illegal sand mining is worth billions annually. Hundreds of activists, journalists, and police officers have reportedly been killed in sand-related conflicts. When sand becomes gold, organized crime follows. Singapore, when sand shapes borders. Singapore has expanded its territory dramatically through land reclamation. Indonesia has reportedly seen more than 24 small islands disappear since 2005, allegedly linked to sand mining. Neighboring countries have restricted exports. A building material has become a diplomatic lever. Sand now redraws maps. Living bricks, a biological future. There is hope. Researchers have developed desert sand bricks, using chemical binders that allow smooth grains to form strong blocks, without river sand. Even more experimental is botanical sand concrete, which uses plant fibers and heat to bind desert sand. For the first time, deserts, like the Sahara, may become sustainable building supplies instead of wasted expanses. We may finally be learning to build without stripping rivers. The final hourglass. For centuries, sand in an hourglass told us when our time was up. Today, the vanishing sand in our rivers is telling us the same thing about our current model of growth. In this era of water bankruptcy, sand is more than a mineral. It regulates water, food, health, borders, energy, and survival. If we strip the riverbed, we don't just lose sand. We lose resilience. And something else is happening quietly. As natural sand is dredged away, it is not leaving behind emptiness. In many river systems, scientists now detect growing traces of microplastics, tiny synthetic fragments similar in size to sand, but incapable of performing its life-supporting role. These artificial grains cannot filter water, recharge aquifers, or sustain microscopic ecosystems. They fill the space, but they do not replace the function. The planet is trading living geology for plastic dust. We once watched sand fall through glass to measure minutes. Now we watch it vanish from rivers and measure consequences. The hidden sand war is not about beaches. It is about whether humanity can learn to build without bankrupting the ground beneath its feet. And whether we can protect the grains that quietly hold together our water, our food, and our future.
It's time to study new words in context. 1. Erosion. Definition: the slow wearing away of soil, rock, or land by water, wind, or ice. Example: the river caused erosion along the riverbank over many years. 2. Glaze. Definition: a thin, shiny layer put on pottery or food to make it smooth and glossy. Example: the artist covered the clay bowl with a blue glaze before firing it. 3. Mortar. Definition: a wet mixture of sand, water, and cement used to hold bricks or stones together. Example: the workers used mortar to build the brick wall. 4. Dredge. Definition: to dig or remove sand, mud, or rocks from the bottom of a river or sea. Example: the company used machines to dredge sand from the river. 5. Stockpiled. Definition: collected and stored in large amounts for future use. Example: the factory stockpiled sand before the price increased. 6. Commodity. Definition: a basic product that can be bought and sold, like oil, gold, or wheat. Example: sand has become a valuable commodity in many countries. 7. Silica. Definition: a natural mineral found in sand that is used to make glass and electronics. Example: silica is melted at high heat to make glass. 8. Fracking. Definition: a method of breaking underground rock to get oil or gas out of the ground. Example: fracking requires large amounts of sand to keep the cracks open. 9. Strain. Definition: pressure or stress caused by too much demand or difficulty. Example: the drought put a strain on the village's water supply. 10. A tipping point. Definition: the moment when a small change causes a big and often permanent effect. Example: the river reached a tipping point when sand mining changed its flow. 11. Spawning. Definition: the act of fish laying eggs in water. Example: the lake is an important place for fish spawning. 12. Aquifer. Definition: a layer of underground rock or sand that holds water. Example: the town gets its drinking water from an underground aquifer. 13. Stagnant. Definition: still and not moving, especially water that does not flow. Example: stagnant water can attract mosquitoes. 14. Beruli. Definition: a serious disease caused by bacteria that damages skin and tissue. While we often call it beruli, the full medical name is beruli ulcer, caused by Mycobacterium ulcerans. Example: doctors are studying how beruli spreads near mining areas. 15. Ulcer. Definition: an open sore on the skin or inside the body that can be painful. Example: the boy received treatment for a skin ulcer. 16. Land reclamation. Definition: the process of creating new land by filling water areas with sand or soil. Example: the city used land reclamation to build new buildings near the coast. 17. A diplomatic lever. Definition: something a country uses to pressure or influence another country. Example: trade rules can become a diplomatic lever between nations. 18. Expanses. Definition: wide, open areas that seem very large. Example: the desert stretches across wide expanses of land. 19. Resilience. Definition: the ability to recover or stay strong after problems or damage. Example: the community showed resilience after the flood. 20. Microplastics. Definition: Very small pieces of plastic that are too tiny to see easily. Example: scientists found microplastics in the river water.
Comprehension questions. 1. Why is sand described as part of a global crisis? Answer: sand is part of a global crisis because we are using it much faster than nature can replace it, especially the type needed for construction and technology. 2. Why is desert sand mostly useless for construction? Answer: desert sand grains are smooth and round because of wind erosion. They do not lock together well in concrete. 3. Where does construction-grade sand mainly come from? Answer: it mainly comes from rivers and seabeds, where water erosion creates sharp and angular grains. 4. Why is the difference between natural formation and extraction important? Answer: sand takes thousands to millions of years to form, but we remove it in just hours. This time mismatch creates environmental problems. 5. Why is sand now considered a global commodity? Answer: sand is traded and sold worldwide for construction, electronics, renewable energy, and fracking. Its market value has grown rapidly. 6. What industries depend heavily on sand? Answer: construction, glass production, electronics, silicon chips, renewable energy, and fracking all depend heavily on sand. 7. How did the sand rush affect Wisconsin farmers? Answer: mining companies began extracting silica sand from farmland, which changed rural communities and created environmental concerns. 8. Why does renewable energy increase sand demand? Answer: wind turbines, solar farms, and other clean energy projects require large amounts of concrete, which contains mostly sand. 9. What has happened to the Mekong River because of sand mining? Answer: sand mining has deepened the riverbed, weakened the reverse water flow, and reduced the water entering Tonle Sap Lake. 10. Why is Tonle Sap Lake important? Answer: it feeds about 6 million people, and provides around 60% of Cambodia's protein through fisheries. 11. What is global water bankruptcy? Answer: it is a term used to describe the serious global water shortage caused by environmental damage, including sand mining. 12. How does sand mining affect underground water? Answer: removing river sand lowers the riverbed and water table, making wells dry up and reducing water supply. 13. Why are abandoned sand pits dangerous? Answer: they fill with stagnant water, which becomes breeding grounds for mosquitoes and harmful bacteria. 14. What is Buruli ulcer? Answer: it is a serious skin disease caused by bacteria, often linked to disturbed soil and stagnant water near mining sites. 15. Why is illegal sand mining called the sand mafia? Answer: because organized criminal groups control sand extraction in some areas, using violence and corruption to make money. 16. How has sand mining affected Singapore's neighboring countries? Answer: some small islands have disappeared, and neighboring countries have restricted sand exports due to environmental damage. 17. What are desert sand bricks? Answer: they are new building materials made by using chemical binders to turn smooth desert sand into strong blocks. 18. What problem does microplastic pollution create in rivers? Answer: microplastics replace natural sand grains, but cannot filter water or support ecosystems, weakening river health. 19. What is the main message of the final hourglass section? Answer: the disappearing sand warns us that our current model of growth is unsustainable, and threatens water, food, and survival. 20. What is the central idea of the entire article? Answer: the article shows that sand, once a simple and common material, has become a critical and limited resource that affects the environment, economy, health, and global politics.